The coronavirus lockdown in the country is highlighting domestic abuse and gender-based violence. The police minister says that more than 2,000 cases have been reported in the first week of the lockdown. Let's talk about this more. I'm joined via Skype by Nthabiseng Moleko, a development economist from the Stellenbosch Business School. A very good morning to you. It's not a surprise, is it? Sadly, we were expecting these numbers to go up in this time.
Joan, thank you so much for having me, and good morning to all the listeners. I think we have a pandemic on our hands, but at the same time, gender-based violence and femicide in the country is well reported, and there have been interventions that have been put in place to try and respond and quell this. And I think reports globally show that during times of violence, during times of national disasters, the vulnerable and those who are probably facing this already are even more so in a vulnerable situation, and measures must be put in place to support such individuals.
And why are they more vulnerable? I mean, many of them are in an enclosed space with their abuser. Is it the stress factor that pushes up this type of abuse?
So, Joan, the unintended consequence of lockdown, which is basically restricted movement, is that individuals are confined within their homes, and if that home is a place of abuse, whether it's psychological, emotional, and also verbal or physical for that matter, we find that the unintended consequence of additional stress and the isolation. I think the additional caveat that you add is the likelihood of contracting a virus should you leave the home. So there are things like shelters that people would ordinarily make use of. In these instances, individuals are now likely to try and reduce even their movement for fear of contracting the virus. So it would then lead to individuals choosing to stay at home in a violent situation. And we would encourage such things that individuals know that there are support mechanisms and measures in place to help them to actually get support. The criminal justice cluster is active. The police, and I think Social Development, Commission of Gender Equality, and the other hotlines that have been made available for people to get and solicit support services. People must know that there is help out there. They must solicit support, and they should not be in violent situations that could potentially lead to loss of life in their home. They must get help.
A staggering more than 2,230 cases in just 1 week, and those are the cases that we've been told about. I'm hearing that people are not phoning, but rather sending SMSs. I mean, that just shows how desperate it is in this time. You say that they can communicate. Who do they communicate to? And what is the legal framework surrounding them if they were to leave their home?
So, firstly, any criminal action, Joan, in this time, police can be, the law has not been suspended. I think we must alert the public that the law has not been suspended. Criminality is still criminality. Acts of criminality must be dealt with as such. And I think that any law that is in place currently, the Domestic Violence Act for that matter, let me refer to that, is very much in place and has not been suspended due to COVID-19. I think that, number one, we must alert the public of that. Secondly, the police can be, you have access to police services. It hasn't been shut down. So I think it's one of the essential services during this time. So I think we just need to allay that to our public, and that individuals know that there are access to police services and all the necessary criminal justice mechanisms that one would have access to, of course, at a reduced rate because movement has been restricted during this time. I do want to respond to the question of how then do we respond and what are the numbers that are available for us to make use of. We know that the social development number that is being made use of in this time is 0800 428 428, and the normal 10-111 number that is made use of by the police or South African Police Service, and the CGE numbers as well, that individuals can lay complaints through so that they can be heard during this time if they are afraid. I do know that there's also that Please Call Me service that is available. So I think that individuals have access to such support. But I do want to say that the might and the arm of the law must be implemented. We have seen with the regulatory framework now that the decisiveness necessary for holding individuals to the fort should be kept even post this. We've seen the way that the state has actually coordinated well and been able to quell and change things quite dramatically with the coordination, the public awareness, and just the machinery of the state. I think this type of method has to be maintained to respond to GBV and any other acts of criminality going forward, even beyond us dealing with this COVID pandemic. We will get through this as a nation, I believe, and people will be healed. And I think you've just reported now cases of people recovering. So let's be positive and see that people can recover. And I think we will also recover from this COVID pandemic.
All right, well, let's leave it on that positive note. Nthabiseng Moleko, and as you say, the legal framework is still there. Nothing has changed. The number to call if you need to is 0800 428 428.